Okay. So let's begin with a little meditation. Set our motivation. Relax your body and mind. And recall that the virtue or non-virtue of an action is determined very much by the motivation, the preliminary motivation. So see if we, in calming our mind, in order to set a very positive motivation to accumulate merit, to develop bodhicitta, to develop the necessary merit to realize emptiness and so forth. So first of all, to focus on the breathing. And when you've cut the continuity of discursive thoughts sufficiently, bring your attention to your heart chakra. Try to withdraw your attention inward, to your mental consciousness. And without any imagination of what it might be, constructing something artificially, just try to observe the nature of the mind. Letting go again and again of whatever thoughts your mind pursues. even when thoughts or images are present, try to be able to see through them by recalling the nature of the mind that lies behind them, within which they arise. Defocusing on the thoughts, they begin to subside, and take as your object of concentration this clear light nature. And within that quiet, spacious mind, which is our conventional Buddha potential, not the ultimate Buddha potential, the emptiness of the mind, just its conventional nature, clear light, recognizing to some degree that we have this basis for Dharma practice. We have a perfect opportunity now of leisure and endowment, freedom from unfree states where there's no chance to practice. If you think your mind is totally under the influence of problems now, buffeted by worries and so forth, this is nothing. We have all of the cooperative conditions that are necessary, or if we don't have all of them, we have most of them. But this situation is impermanent. With every moment we're ending our maturation of karma that threw us into this life. Our lifespan is decreasing. And after this life, if we really check honestly, we have no assurance that we're going to be born again as a human or in the upper realms. Using our observation logic, more often than not, we create negative karma. The virtue we create is often weak. The non-virtue we create is super strong and in great quantity. And that's even having met the Dharma. So is that from a starting point, a fear of the suffering of future lives in the lower realms, the fear of losing the opportunity to practice the Dharma, to escape from samsara, the fear of not having the chance to overcome our self-cherishing and work for the welfare of others, is one of the causes of refuge. The other cause being confidence, faith, that the Buddha, the omniscient mind, the Dharma that was taught by the Buddha, realized by him through his own experience, and the Sangha of Arya beings who've realized that, put it into practice, are the only refuge that can protect us from the sufferings of samsara, because the Dharma leads us out of it. Whatever other teachings we encounter, that we investigate, none of them have that quality. None of the founders, perfect refuges like the Buddha. Knowing the Buddha's teachings ultimately led to the ultimate meaning of emptiness, which he taught in many different levels for many different minds, different systems of thought. Sometimes teaching things are truly existent, sometimes not truly existent, some partially truly existent, partially not, so forth. Knowing that these are stepping stones, like rungs of a ladder or staircase, steps of a staircase, to lead us to the more subtlemost view of emptiness. Think, for the welfare of all sentient beings who, like myself, are suffering, want to be free of suffering, who lack happiness but want it, want to be loved, want to be successful, want to be engaging and enjoying pleasure. For their welfare, in order to really bring that about, long-term happiness, not just temporary gift or sweet word, but long-term happiness for all sentient beings of the greatest intensity. I must attain enlightenment to do that. To do so, I'm going to listen to, participate in the class on Buddhist tenets, to better understand these views of emptiness and the explanation of the activities of the hearers, solitary realizers, bodhisattvas, the method side. So for that purpose, I'm going to engage in the following activity of participating in the class, to achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back, present. So, how's everyone? Any questions? Passing out, is it chocolate-covered cherries? Nice. Yes?
I don't know. That's a question about something I just read. Thinking we covered it last week, but we didn't. I'll wait till we get to it. It's on page 17 under Mode of Asserting Objects. That paragraph that says the definition of a conventional truth is, and then it says an object which is found by valid cognizer, distinguishing a conventionality in respect to which a valid cognizer, distinguishing a conventionality becomes a valid cognizer. I mean, that...
Distinguishing conventionality.
Is that like a rose is a rose is a rose, or...
No. Well, I mean, I don't know what a rose is a rose is a rose means actually, but I believe all these extra phrases are there because the Buddha's omniscient mind is always an exception, or is often an exception to other definitions about various mental states. Here it's talking about that which is conventional truth. For Buddha's mind, everything both conventional and ultimate truths are perceived simultaneously. For ordinary beings' minds, even 10th level bodhisattvas, whether they be in meditative equipoise or post-meditative equipoise, that is, whether they're meditating on emptiness or whether they're perceiving conventionalities, only one of the truths is directly perceived in a manifest form, is directly perceived. Whereas the Buddha's omniscient mind perceives both levels of truth at the same time. So these phrases are put in there to distinguish, to indicate that this is in the mind of an ordinary being. So that is, say, the definition of a conventional truth. I don't think we mentioned this last time, did we? Did we get this far?
Well, then let's save it till we
Okay, well, the definition of a conventional truth is an object, okay, an existent phenomena, which is found by a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality, apprehending a conventionality, with respect to which a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality becomes a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality. So that phrase, that final phrase, eliminates the Buddha's mind from being a contradiction to this, because the Buddha's mind distinguishes conventionalities all the time, and simultaneous to perceiving ultimate truth. So we'll go back in a second. We'll come back to that in a second. So we're on the section on prasangika. The prasangika madhyamaka. And so last time we talked about the definition, did we? Okay, that's what we did. And we said examples. Examples, is that the second outline? What's the second outline of the 7? Divisions. So here, it's saying examples. This is examples of... In the last section on the Sautrantika, what was the second outline called? Divisions, right? So here, I'm not sure why it says suddenly, without giving any warning. Pardon? Yeah, sure, there's division. No, there's no divisions of prasangika. Here we go, Tangira. Oh. Oh, okay. Nipa. So it doesn't say examples, it just says 2 in the text. Lobon Sangye Kyang. So, am I looking at the right place? Yeah, Prasangika. Second, Lobong Sangye Kyang, so that means Acharya Buddhapalita. The translator didn't translate Lobong. So it's Acharya Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti, and Shantideva are such as them. Okay, divisions. So you could say, although the Prasangika, they're not usual divisions like we had for the... Remember for the Sautrantika, we had divisions of what? Okay. Shh. Shh. Shout it out.
Say, which one are you looking for? The Sautrantika or the
The Sautrantika Madhyamaka. What are the divisions?
Sautrantika, Madhyamaka, and the Yogacaras.
Right. So there were those that accorded mainly with the Sautrantikas, and some that accorded mainly according with the Yogacaras, the Chittamatrans. Here, there's no divisions like that, but there are individuals who were great upholders of the Prasangika system, starting with Buddhapalita, who pointed out the errors in Bhava Viveka's criticism. I'm sorry, Buddhapalita was the person who wrote a text explaining Nagarjuna's view correctly according to the Prasangika view, really. And Chandrakirti defended that view from the criticisms of Bhava Viveka, who was what kind of Svatantrika was he, do you remember? Don't you say, while she's thinking, you can answer. She's not. Otherwise, we wait a long time. Remember, Buddhapalita was a Svatantrika. What kind of Svatantrika was he? Bhava Viveka. Sautrantika. Svatantrika, right? So you might think somehow, because it's lower school and he made some mistakes, you criticize Buddhapalita, therefore he must be dumb, not worthy of my respect. But he wrote many great texts, and the Blaze of Reasoning was quoted this weekend in Rinpoche Rinpoche's course. Do you remember what it was talking about? Maybe if you take a look back in the section, he talked about or the heart of the Madhyamaka. That's another text, Blaze of Reasoning and Heart of Madhyamaka. I think do they call it the heart or the essence of the Madhyamaka? Kind of encyclopedic texts that talk about all of the Buddhist and non-Buddhist tenets, and His Holiness holds that work in very high regard. So, not in any of these beings that were great teachers of these various tenets were very great beings and practitioners, may have actually been Buddhas manifesting these, the practice of these particular tenets, especially if they're lineage lamas. But in particular, the final pure view of the Prasangika was explained, we usually take as the main sources for that explanation, Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti, Shantideva. The text by Chandrakirti, the Madhyamaka Vatara, and its self-commentary, auto-commentary by Chandrakirti, are the main texts that are studied in the Gelugpa monasteries when they study Prasangika. I think Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa that Chandrakirti was a 10th level bodhisattva who had taken rebirth in the world, particularly to illuminate and elucidate Nagarjuna's view correctly, so he could be totally relied upon. And having heard that from his guru Manjushri, Lama Tsongkhapa spent a lot of time studying both Buddhapalita. I mean, he had the prophetic dream that he had in the morning before he had some special insight into emptiness was Buddhapalita coming and putting a text on his head and feeling like he'd finally understood some of the stanzas in Buddhapalita's text. But Lama Tsongkhapa wrote great commentary on Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Vatara that we study called Gompa Rabso, illuminating the intention. And then Shantideva also, in the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara, did you know that? He was in the wisdom chapter, that's one of the sources for the Prasangika view. So it's kind of interesting. One of the things, there's slightly different explanation about why Rangrik, do you remember what Rangrik is? Self-cognizer? Self-knowing awareness. They have slightly different explanations of why self-knowing, why you can have memory without the necessity of self-knowing. So you might look in the future when you study those texts, slightly different, maybe end at the same point, maybe not, but both very elegant. So the etymology of prasangika, and I think we did do this last night. There's a reason why Acharya Buddhapalita Labun Sangikyang is called a prasangika. So it's written in kind of a syllogistic reasoning fashion here. There is a reason, because this is the cheer that we talked about in class earlier. He asserts that an inferential cognizer realizing a proposition is generated in the continuum of a latter disputant, that means the person to whom you give the statement, by a mere consequence, by the mere statement of a consequence. So in other words, usually Buddha, Bhavaviveka and others would say that in order to, there's two kinds of disputants. They say the latter and the former. What it means is the person who is leading the debate, and the latter disputant is the person who is the respondent or is trying to defend or whatever a certain position. And so when you give a syllogism, that's the usual method to develop an inferential cognizer, like when we studied in Lorig, in awareness and knowledge. Like sound is impermanent because it's a product, like a pot or something like that. You would have a statement, a reason. It's called a reason or reasoning, or you could call it a syllogism. I've just found some people who are familiar, we mentioned before, with Aristotelian logic, say a syllogism has to have, is sort of in Greek logic, has to have certain features that are not present here, but you call it a syllogism if you want. So, or reasoning. The Prasangikas, Buddhapalita and Chandrakirti said that it wasn't necessary to state a reason in order to develop an inferential cognizer. You can state a reason, but reliance only on reasons almost kind of presupposes this Svatantrika position that reasons are autonomous, that the connection between the three modes, the property of the subject, the forward privation, the reverse privation, are inherently existent. There's some kind of supposition, if that's the only way that you could develop an inference. So the Prasangikas said that it is possible with a sharp opponent, that's why you might call later disputant here, your opponent, that you're giving instead of giving a syllogism, you can give them an consequence of their wrong view. And on the basis of that, you don't even have to restate the correct the correct syllogism later. They can understand on the basis of that and actually develop an inferential cognizer, realizing emptiness, among other things. So that's why they're called prasangika. Prasanga means consequence in Sanskrit. Do you know what it is in Tibetan? Tibetan word? Tengyur, or telgyur, if you pronounce it slowly. You can see, at the break, you can see how it's spelled on that page here, telgyur.
In Sanskrit? What was it?
Prasanga. It means consequence. So the prasangikas could be translated as the consequentialists, if you want. I don't know how other people have translated it. Have you seen any other translation? Haven't seen? Sorry, into English. Okay, so now we get to the third division, or the fourth division rather, mode of asserting objects. So it begins by saying there are two kinds of objects, hidden and manifest. Do you remember we've talked about hidden and manifest in other of the tenet systems, like in the Sautrantika system and the Hinayana, very famous, talk about three kinds of phenomena. Those that are manifest, those that are hidden, and among hidden, there's hidden and deeply hidden, deeply hidden phenomena. Deeply hidden phenomena might be phenomena that are, manifest phenomena are phenomena that can be perceived from the beginning with direct perception, right? manifest phenomena. You don't need reasoning. How about the other side of the moon, the dark side of the moon? Is that a hidden phenomena? I mean, we can't perceive it, so, and we had to depend on, we have to check if that's hidden phenomena. Well, I don't think it's hidden phenomena. Maybe you can sometimes say that certain things are hidden temporarily, but they're capable of being perceived with direct perception. And when the astronauts went around, or the spaceships ran around and had the cameras, they could perceive the dark side of the moon. It wasn't. Hidden phenomena are, on the other hand, are phenomena that cannot be perceived initially with direct perception. They're not manifest to the senses. They have to be perceived initially through inference. Do you know what inference means? What does it mean? Okay. Okay, and every day out there life, what would it mean? Say
It
again.
means, well, it means that something is inferred or implied from something else, implied from something else.
Right, so here it's a little more formal what's meant. An inference is a particular kind of, when we talk about through an it has to be realized through inference. That means through an inferential cognizer. It means a particular state of mind that's realized a kind of formal connection between a certain sign that you could perceive that infers, that's why it's called an inference, something else, the presence of something else. Like on a smoky pass, subject, fire exists because smoke exists. If you could perceive the smoke either with your eyes or your sensitive nose, you could infer the existence of fire, because smoke does not exist without the previous cause of fire. So that's what's meant by an inference. Hidden phenomena cannot be perceived initially without first realizing them via an inference.
So would the dark side of the moon be a hidden object?
Well, so what do you think?
I think it is, because it's inferred by the side that's not dark.
It's inferred by the side that's not. I don't know. It could be just completely flat there. It doesn't
It
necessarily.
could be the other side.
Could be just a shell, thin.
It could be the other side. It's a part of
Wouldn't-
the moon.
Could be transparent. Doesn't have to be dark. I don't think you could infer that the qualities of the other side of the moon simply by looking at this side of the moon. But I wouldn't think that's called a hidden phenomena, because hidden phenomena is one that can only be perceived initially through inference. If you go up there or the other side of the moon, you can see the other side of the moon with your eyes. You don't have to. It's not a hidden phenomena. Hidden phenomena are things such as subtle impermanence. No matter where you go, how close you go, you cannot perceive subtle impermanence, the momentary change from moment to moment due to karma. Emptiness is a hidden phenomena. No matter where you go, how you go, other side of the moon, other universe, you cannot perceive emptiness with your senses, unless you're a Buddha. Buddha perceives both levels of truth simultaneously.
How about what someone else is thinking?
So you can't perceive that directly without using inference? Yes means what? You cannot perceive another person's mind without using inference first, realizing it through inference. Well, what about clairvoyance?
Well, then you have to say the hidden to whom?
I'm not sure you have to say hidden to whom, just a phenomena in general that cannot be perceived initially unless, cannot be perceived initially with direct perception. but has to be first realized via inference. You can realize another person's mind, you can infer another person's mind, maybe, or maybe you're guessing, but you might have an inference. You can infer that a bodhisattva has great compassion by the fact of when they see sentient beings suffering and their hairs stand on end and their tears well up in their eyes. You can infer the existence of water off in the desert because some water birds are circling above in the sky. But when you the water also you can perceive directly with your eyes, and the compassion of the bodhisattva you could perceive if you had clairvoyance, if you were at a higher level than they. Maybe in a sense, to us, usually in terms of clairvoyance, you can't perceive the mind of someone who's of a higher spiritual level than yourself. So maybe in a sense you could start to make some kind of divisions or something and say to that person that is a hidden object. But in general, that's not a hidden object, because it's capable of being perceived by ordinary beings, non-Buddhists, without relying on inference first. But things like emptiness, you can't perceive emptiness from the very beginning. You have to first develop a generic image, a mental image of it, through realizing it, a correct, factually concordant mental image of it, through realizing it through inference. Then on the basis of meditating on that again and again, the mental image can begin to dissipate over time, and you eventually can have a direct perception of it. It's different than another person's mind. You don't have to first infer what Carrie's thinking. You can have a direct perception. Zap. Actually, some of the methods, when you have shine, when you have tranquil abiding, it said, I remember Alan Wallace once asked Geshe Rapton, I think, may I told you the story? He asked Geshe Rapton when Geshe Rapton was teaching Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment, the Bodhisattva-dipam, the famous text that's the origin of all the Latin Rim literature. So Geshe was talking about clairvoyance and the need to develop it, and Alan was sitting in the front because he was one of the close students of Geshe, living with Geshe, and he said, "Well, what's the method? What's the method to develop clairvoyance?" And Geshe said, Geshe's very powerful-looking Lama, Kampa, very big, and said, "First you develop shine, tranquil abiding, then I tell you." So sometimes some of the methods to develop clairvoyance in the scriptures have to do with inferring states, looking at someone, and in order, once you've got the single point of concentration, in order to get to that person's mind, you see tears coming in their eyes, or you see their cheeks getting red when they're sitting at another table when they hear something, so you maybe infer that they're embarrassed or something, and that acts as a conduit for you to be able to then to enter into clairvoyance. But that's not considered to be a realization. That's just a method to initiate clairvoyance. Once you have clairvoyance, you don't have to use those methods any longer. Or the clairvoyance can occur by other means, also through the agency of a deity or something like that.
All the manifest objects apprehended by the sense consciousnesses, the five?
Say that again?
Are they all apprehended by sense?
Manifest phenomena?
Yeah. Always.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Can you think of something that's not? I think so. So there are two kinds of objects, hidden and manifest. So if we divide, as I say, hidden objects must be realized by depending on a sign. So that means an inference, a syllogism. Manifest objects are objects that can be ascertained by ordinary beings through the power of experience without depending on a sign. Example of hidden objects are the impermanence of sound and a sound's emptiness of true existence. Examples of manifest objects are a pot and a woolen cloth. Not a wooden cloth. You know what a wooden cloth would be. Very common examples. I'm not sure. I think maybe Dharmakirti or Dignaga use those examples in their text often. Pot. Sometimes people translate it as vase. but the word in Sanskrit can mean just something as simple as a clay pot. So that's probably a better way to translate it, although in some cases the Tibetans sometimes take it to mean vase, this kind of thing we use in the rituals, and woolen cloth. Very common kind of things. Manifest object and directly perceivable are synonymous. Okay, so here's a special idea of the prasangika, of the prasangika. Manifest object, ngunsum, manifest object, how do we say? Ngunsum da ngungyur. Ngungyur means manifest. Ngunsum means directly perceivable. Ngunsum is the word that we translated earlier as sometimes as direct perception, or naked perceiver, direct perceiver. So here it has a special meaning in the Prasangika. Manifest object are those things that are she's actually translated in the opposite order of what's actually here. First comes directly perceivable, and then manifest comes in the text. These are synonymous. The definition of a conventional truth is, for Peter, an object which is found by a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality. So say we just stop there. What does that mean? You can have two kinds of valid cognizers. You can have valid cognizers investigating the ultimate and valid cognizers investigating the conventional. Let me see the word, if the 31, 32. So it is an object found by a valid cognition analyzing, what does it say here? Distinguishing. This is Tanye Chuche. Chuba is a mental factor called analysis. So analyzing conventionalities. Perhaps that's a more precise way of saying it. And then wherever it says distinguishing, you could put analyzing if you wanted to. So there are two kinds of valid cognizers. Those that are analyzing conventionalities or investigating in conventionalities, and those that are analyzing the ultimate. So, for instance, what is ultimate analysis as opposed to conventional analysis? If I said, where is Peter? And I wasn't satisfied, if someone said, oh, that's Peter over there. If I wasn't satisfied with that and said, well, what's Peter? Is it the nose, the ears, the brain, the collection of aggregates? What is actually Peter? If I wasn't satisfied with the mere name that the Prasangika says sort of very uniquely compared to the other tenets, is the only phenomena of Peter, right? Peter is just a name imputed to the aggregates that are the basis of designation of Peter. If I'm not satisfied with that mere name and seek something within the basis of designation, that's called ultimate analysis. Trying to find the ultimacy of something. Conventional analysis is saying, where's Peter? Oh, he's at Land of Medicine Buddha. Where is he? He's in the Gompa. Well, which one is he? He said, that's Peter. All of that could be a conventional analysis, analyzing conventionalities, without trying to find within the basis of designation the object imputed. So let's say if we just stop the definition there, that would make some sense. The definition of a conventional truth is an object which is found by a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality. Okay. That's what a conventional truth is. And with respect to which a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality becomes a valid cognizer analyzing a conventionality. So that phrase is added in order to distinguish it from the Buddha's mind. Let's see if there's an explanation in, did you see in Geshe-la's text here? I think similar kind of definition, manifest. What are we talking about? We're talking about definition of conventional truth, right? Is there a definition of conventional truth here? You see, starting in which one? 305. Okay. Oh, I was looking in the wrong school. Okay. The definition of something being conventional truth, or more literally, a truth for a concealing consciousness. Well, there's a commentary coming afterwards, right? Is an object that is found by a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality, and with respect to which a valid cognition distinguishing a conventionality becomes a valid cognition distinguishing a conventionality. Pardon? Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe in this other text there wasn't analyzing, or maybe Geshe took it as that. So here the commentary says, a definition of a conventional truth sufficient to apply to anyone but a Buddha is an object found by a valid cognition that distinguishes a conventionality. That is, any existent except emptiness. Because all phenomena that exist have to be one of two truths, Nagarjuna said. They either have to be conventional truths, conventionalities, or emptinesses, ultimate truth. There's no other third kind of phenomena. Okay? So here it says, this for anyone other than a Buddha, this would be sufficient, the first part of the statement. Do you see, Peter? You have that coming? However, a single consciousness of a Buddha distinguishes both conventionalities, everything except emptiness, as well as the final nature of those phenomena, emptiness itself. Thus, a Buddha is said to have a valid cognition that distinguishes conventional phenomena only from the point of view of the object, such as a pot. Buddha is said to have a valid cognition that distinguishes conventional phenomena only from the point of view of the object. Similarly, a Buddha is said to have a valid cognition that distinguishes the final nature only from the point of view of that object, such as the emptiness of the pot. Thus, relative to different objects, a Buddha is said to have valid cognitions that distinguish conventional phenomena and distinguish the final nature. However, a Buddha's valid cognition that distinguishes conventional phenomena also distinguishes the final nature of phenomena. So this is why this phrase is going to be necessary. And a Buddha's valid cognition that distinguishes the final nature also distinguishes the conventional phenomena. Therefore, with respect to a Buddha, an object found by a valid cognition that distinguishes conventional phenomena is not necessarily a conventional phenomena. Right? Make sense? Could be an emptiness also, because it perceives both, distinguishes both. Similarly, with respect to a Buddha, an object found by a valid cognition that distinguishes the final nature is not necessarily a final nature, an emptiness. The second part of the definition, therefore, is given for the sake of including the objects of a Buddha's cognitions within the framework of the definition. That make sense? Yeah. Big smile from Venerable. When knowledge dawns, it's such pleasure. Much better than a slice of pizza or... Okay, that's good. Huh? Okay. Better than pizza. Hard to believe, but true. Okay.
So is this second valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality becomes a valid cognizer? Is that the Buddha's?
No, that's to distinguish. This is true for a sentient being other than a Buddha. That is, a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality. A Buddhist, let's just say, if you said a conventional truth is an object which is found by a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality alone, right? That would not exclude emptinesses, because for a Buddha's mind, if you took Buddha as an example, because a definition has to fit everything, right? If you took Buddha's mind as an example, a Buddha's mind distinguishing, his valid cognizer distinguishing conventionalities, also distinguish or comprehend ultimate truths, right? Whereas this is supposed to be the definition of a conventional truth. That first part would hold true just for an ordinary being. So the second part is added to exclude the Buddha's mind. How does it exclude that? With respect to which, what does that mean? An object, right? It's talking about the object. With respect to which a valid cognizer distinguishing conventionality becomes a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality. So a valid cognizer distinguishing a conventionality has a particular object. I don't know if we'll have time to analyze this point right now. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. So we'll see as we go to the other definition, also the ultimate truth. So this is, if you learn, you can impress. You can impress. If you want to impress, if you're one of these people who like to have some gems to impress important people, do you know, like some? I remember my uncle had this definition of a window. Do you know the definition of a window? A window is an orifice set in an edifice used for the transmission of luminiferous ether. That's the definition of window. So, I mean, you might have some, that's not a very good definition, but say you might have some things to impress important people, that you know something. So, if you wanted to know one, this would be very good to know, the definition, according to Prasangika, of an ultimate truth, because there are all these extra phrases in it. And even Tibetans, most, that are not learned in the scriptures, would find some difficulty in this definition.
So, for those of us that don't care about impressing anybody.
It's not the reason, I'm just joking, of course.
Going back to the beginning up there, top of 306, when you said, thus a Buddha is said to have a valid cognition that distinguishes conventional phenomena only from the point of view of the object, such as the pot. Can you explain that a little bit more?
We have this class and one more class to finish. And if we go into a lot of detail on